All right. Good evening. We are ready to start a new parak. So, we should be enjoy his family. We are going to enjoy our sponsors. Two of them, Daf Yomi for the week, is sponsored by Shmuley and Miriam Fuchs, Nishmas Miriam's father. Henoch ben Yaakov HaKohen Zichron Levrach, whose yahrzeit was on the 7th of Kislev, and Daf Yomi is also the sponsor this week by Ryan and Tali Bernkoff. Lili Nishmas Tali's grandfather, Mayor Zev ben Yitzchak HaKohen Zichron Levrach, whose yahrzeit was on the 5th of Kislev. We are on the bottom, very bottom of Ayin Amud Beis 70b, at the bottom. Kol HaZevachim. This is a great parak, all about things that get mixed together and how they get nullified. So, Kol HaZevachim shenis arvu bechatos hamesos. Okay, let's say you have any korban, and it gets mixed together with a chatos that dies. In what circumstance do you have a chatos that dies? So we have Rashi tells us there are 5 chatos that die, right? One is a offspring of a chatos. If you have a chatos, goat is a female, it's a female goat if it has a baby. So that offspring has the same kedusha as the mother, but the thing is there's no sin that it's going to atone for. So that animal is invalid for sacrifice. Also, if you have a sin offering and the owner dies before he brings it, so then that animal also has no owner to atone for. A tamura, somebody makes an exchange for another animal so that the new animal achieves the status of the old animal. The only thing is that the new animal has no avera that it's atoning for. Also, if the animal got lost, the owner took a new korban and he got atoned for, then you find the original animal. So
tracking device on it.
That would be great if they didn't have those so much back then. And also, if you lost your korban and then by the time you found it, it was too old to be a korban. So in those circumstances, there are 5 circumstances where a korban chatos, if you have one of those circumstances, it's invalid. Can't use it. You can't. You have to let that korban die. So now, if you have such an animal, right? Let's say you have a zevach that gets mixed together with such animals, o bishur haniskal, or another type of animal which is prohibited to use is a ox which kills a person, and the ox is going to be stoned. So it's supposed to be killed by Basin. So that animal, you're not allowed to get any benefit from if it gets mixed up with the other animals. Afilu achas beribo, even 1 in 10,000, right? Which sounds like so 1 in 10,000. So then kula yamusu, all of them now die, right? You mix it together. This sounds like what you're mixing together is one bad animal into many, many good animals, or is it one bad animal into many, one good animal into many, many bad animals? So you can't find it exactly. So that they are all going to be, they all can't be used. Kula nisarvu bishur shenevda bo avera. Let's say they get mixed together with an ox that an avera was done with it. So, for example, what types of averos? So, for example, so for Oshehemis Esha Adam, right? If a person, or if the animal killed a person, or Alpi Edachad, and there's one witness that testifies about the fact that this animal killed it. Alpi Abalim, or the owner himself testifies about it. Berova v'nirva, let's say the animal has had relations with a person, so then the animal is also invalid for korban. B'muktzah, an animal is set aside and designated for avodah zarah. V'nevad, if it was worshipped for avodah zarah. Be'esnan, if the animal was used as a purchase price for prostitution. U'mechir, or it was used as a purchase of a dog. Right, you're not allowed to exchange an animal that is used as a purchase for a dog, becomes invalid for sacrifice. So all of the bikil ayam. Also, if you have an animal that is a hybrid, right, is a combination of a goat and a sheep. I'm not sure if that's possible, but you would have there must be, because if that such an animal is invalid for korban, ubetrefa, or if the animal is a treifa, ubiyotze dofen, or the animal is born by cesarean section. Yiru ad shiyista evu. So the halacha in those cases is this is not getting mixed up with an animal that's supposed to die. These animals don't have to die necessarily, they just can't be brought as korbanos. So the halacha by these animals is supposed to go out to pasture. As soon as they get a blemish, then they can be redeemed. So now that these animals get mixed together with kosher animals, with perfectly fine animals, the entire flock achieves that status, and the entire flock now needs to be put out to pasture and wait till they develop a blemish. When it develops a blemish, then v'yimachru, then you're going to sell it. V'yavu b'nei hayafish shebahen may also hamin. You're going to bring the value of the most expensive of the animals from that type, right? Because, right, if you don't know which one is the one that's no good, but you have to presume that the one that was no good was the most expensive out of all of them. So you wait till they all get a blemish, then you're going to sell all of them, then you're going to find out which one was the most expensive, and then that's the one that becomes the korban.
How would you know about if animal was used for avodah zarah?
Yeah, you'd have to have knowledge. You couldn't look at it and tell, right?
Yeah,
so it would have to be that somehow you knew that you saw this animal worshipped avodah zarah, and then it ran out into the pasture before you stopped it. You know you had one, right, but now it's gone.
Let's say you saw like a flock of let's say you saw like a cow that was used by avodah zarah, but all of them, the other cows all looked the same.
Yeah.
How it mixed in, but all those become puzzle?
So that's what we're saying, yes. So now that all become puzzle.
Just based on that one.
So that's what the Gemara is going to clarify that point. Yeah. And that was a little vague intentionally so that the Gemara will be able to clarify that. But that is yes. Okay. Even though there's only the one, right, they're all going to become ruined. Okay.
What about the treifa? The treifa you should be able to tell. Mixed in with the treifa.
You guys are sharp. You should, because there should be some kind of wound on the animal, right? Yeah. So the Gemara is going to ask that question. Okay. Fine. So now, nisarbu bechulin, right? Let's say these animals get mixed together with non-sacrificial animals. Those are all the circumstances you're going to mixed in with sacrificial animals. They nisarbu bechulin temimim yimachru hachulin litzorche oso hamin. So. Right, so now what you have is you have a korban, you have one animal that's a korban, and it's mixed together with other animals that are not korbanos. So what do? You sell all of the animals for the sake of people who have to bring that same korban, right? So if you have one olah that got mixed in together with 5 animals that are chulin, now you don't know which one's which, sell all of them as olas, and then the Kohen's going to bring all of them as olas.
It's not to a Kohen, or it's not to anyone?
Anybody who needs an olah, right? Now you've got all, because now all of them are going to be brought as olas, and that fixes that problem, right? Kodshim bekodshim. So now let's say you mix up one type of sacrificial animal with other types of sacrificial animals. Min bimino, and all of them are olos, meaning I have an olah, you have an olah, you have an olah, and you have an olah. We all get together, and now our 4 animals run around together, and we don't know which one's which. Okay, so now we know we've got 4 olos, but we don't know whose is whose. So zeh yikrav l'shem mishahu v'zeh yikrav l'shem mishahu. So the Kohen's going to bring the animal, and he said, "This is whoever's olah it is." Right? Hashem knows whose olah it is. That's not a problem, right? And that's how you do it. Kodjim bekodjim min b'b'she'eno mino. Let's say we all have animals that are holy, but they're different korbanos. So now we're not sure what to do. So now, yiru ad sheyista evu. Now they've got to go out to pasture, wait till they get a blemish, and then sell them. V'yavi b'nei hayafet shebahem min zeh, u'b'nei hayafet shebahem min zeh. Then everybody's got to figure out whichever was the most expensive animal. That might have been your animal and your korban. So therefore, even though we've got one animal worth 50, one animal worth 40, and one animal worth 40, and one animal worth 40, right? Now, therefore, when we sell all 4 animals, we've only got $170 to work with here. Nevertheless, each of us is going to have to, we'll have to split that, and each of us is going to have to go purchase an animal that's 50, because the one that was ours might have been the one that was 50, and we have to replace it for.
Cost way more than that.
I'm not sure how much a goat costs if you go to a pet store. I'm not sure. So he has to bring, basically he's going to have to supplement the amount that they don't get in the sale from his house. Nisarvu bebechor ubemaser. Let's say the animal gets mixed together, right? Next case is that this ola or shlomim got mixed together with other animals that were a bechor, or they were meiser tied animals. So those circumstances that even if they get a blemish, the meat that you're allowed to use cannot be treated in a disrespectful way. So they can't be, for example, when the meat gets slaughtered, you're not supposed to sell it by putting it on a scale. You're not supposed to do major business with it. So now the rule is, Yirach Yista'evu, you have to wait till all the animals get blemishes. V'yochlu kibechor ukemaser, and then when you redeem the animals, you have to treat them all in that kind of respect. All the animals now have that level of respect. Hakol yichol lisarev chutz min hachatos ve'ha'asham. And all types of korbanos, right, can wind up being mixed up with other types of korbanos, because there are, all the animals that are brought as korbanos can be similar to other types of korbanos, same animals. The only ones is chutz min hachatos ve'ha'asham, right? You can't mix up a chatos or an osham. Why? Because you're going to always be able to tell which one's the chatos, the osham, because a chatos can never be brought from a ram, and an osham is always brought from a ram. So therefore, if you've got a ram mixed, if you brought a chatos and you brought an osham, I can always tell you which one's whose is whose, right? The ram is going to belong to the person who's the osham, and the chatos is not. Okay, so now into the Gemara. Let's discuss what's going on here. So my afilu, why is it that the Mishnah says that even if one gets mixed in 10,000, it's not going to be good? Well, it would seem to be a very basic thing, that if you had 10,000 bad animals and one good animal got mixed in, that it would be no good. So hachikamer, this is what the Mishnah means to say. It's the other way. That's the chiddush. Kol hazvachim shenis arvu bahen chatos hamesos. If you have a whole bunch of kosher animals, kosher sacrifice animals, and the chatos hamesos get mixed in with them, oshor niskal, or even an ox that is going to be stoned. Afilu echad berivo yamusu kulan. Even if it's one bad animal and 10,000 good animals, they're all going to die. Now, we're going to see a bunch of rules about how rove works, how a majority works, and how a majority is going to nullify the minority. Generally speaking, right, the rule is that achrei rab mahatos, Rashi says that you're always supposed to go by the majority. So therefore, when you have a majority of anything, the majority wins. And it's batal. And how does batela work? Bata works means that if I've got two permitted items, one prohibited item, the two outweigh the one, and now all three are permitted. However, midirabanan, rabbinically speaking, there are all kinds of stringencies and rules for when animals are going, different kinds of nullification are going to take place. So therefore, we're going to be strict in this circumstance that even a 1 in 10,000 is not going to nullify. And we're going to wonder why that is. And we're going to give some explanations as to when is it that something can never be nullified. Now, the result is that since all of these are rabbinic rules, there are circumstances where we can become lenient with them, and we'll see where those circumstances are also. But this is why when we start to talk about nullifications, there are going to be circumstances where we're going to say, that doesn't make mathematical sense. Nevertheless, we're going to be okay with that, because it's not that it makes mathematical, because we have a rule that when it comes to rabbinic rules, we're always going to go leniently. So we can rely on things despite the fact that that's not the probability. That's my introduction to the mathematical problems that come up with some of these majority-minority cases. We're always thinking to ourselves, well, because when it's a majority, the reason why it's okay is probably because you simply didn't take it, right? The reason why, if I mix something that's prohibited into two things that are permitted, the reason why it's all permitted is because when I took one, I must have taken the one that was permitted. Well, it's more than that, because not only that, but the one that was prohibited actually becomes permitted as well. So you can wind up using all three. And then we're going to have circumstances where we're going to say 1 in 10,000, now good, but then we'll see how this all works out. Okay. So afilu echa baribo yamusu kulan, even if it's 1 to 10,000, all of them are going to die. Tanina chada zimna. The problem is we already have a Mishnah that teaches this rule that one prohibited item mixes together with all these permitted items. All of them are going to be prohibited. Where do we see that? We have this Mishnah in Maseches Temura. says like this in Maseches Tamura: Kol ha'asurin legabi mizbeach, anything that's prohibited to be brought as a korban, as osrin bechol shehein, it becomes prohibited in the smallest amount. So therefore, the stringency here, the reason why we're being strict, is because it's for a korban's sake. So therefore, we want to be very strict with what comes up on the mizbeach. Therefore, not all of them are going to be invalid. That's why we're not allowing any of these to come up. So, for example, harovea v'hanirva. So, for example, an animal that's had relations with a person. So, all of those, that animal and etc. We have the whole list that we have here: the treifa, the kilayim, the hybrids, all the ones that we mentioned here. Any small amount, i.e. 1 in 10,000, it's going to nullify the whole group. So, therefore, same thing here. So, why is it that we have the Mishnah twice? Why doesn't this Mishnah say it? We already have a Mishnah in Tamura that says it. So Amar Rav Ashi, said, Risa l'shmasa kamid Rav Shimi. So I asked this question, I had taught this teaching before Rav Shimi. Ve'atzrichon, and he said, I'll explain to you why it is that we need both Mishnayos. De'i mehasam, if you had the Mishnah over there in Tamura, so then havamina hani mili ligavoa, I would have thought that we're being strict. Because why? Because it's korbanos that we're dealing with, right? We have korbanos, and Hashem doesn't want us to mess around with having inferior quality korbanos. Therefore, maybe we're very strict. We say even the slightest disqualification is going to ruin even 10,000 valid animals. Aval lehedyot. But if we're talking about you have these chatos that die, or a shor haniskal, which are prohibited for getting any benefit, right? And they get mixed together with they get mixed. So those the prohibitions are prohibitions of hana, meaning that you can't even get any benefit from them at all. They get mixed up. So ema lo. So I wouldn't say, since the chachamim are going to say, well, if I had animals that I wasn't allowed to bring as a korban, but I was allowed to get benefit out of them, like, for example, the bestiality animals, those animals. So then what will be the halacha? So I wait till they get a blemish that I could sell them, and then, okay, great, I'm good. So therefore, what's the loss here? The loss is time. I got to wait until I have to wait till they get a blemish before I can resell it. But if I got mixed up, let's say I had some, so that's why potentially we're not going to be lenient in those cases. But if I have an animal that is so prohibited that nobody's going to be allowed to get benefit out of it at all, which means I can't put it out to pasture, wait till it gets a blemish, and then sell it and then use it. I'm never going to use these animals. Now the whole flock becomes prohibited for benefit. I might think, no, I don't go that far. The Chachamim were not that strict to cause such a huge loss. So therefore, our Mishnah says no. Even those kinds of animals are still going to invalidate the entire flock, and the entire flock becomes prohibited from getting any benefit out of them. The imehacha, and if you had said that here, so then I would have said havamina hani hu de isure hanan. The reason why we're very strict is because these are very strictly prohibited animals. They're so prohibited that you can't even get any benefit out of them. About hani, but these other types of animals that are in the Mishnah and Tamura in Malo, I would say no. So therefore, it's tzrichi. So I need to teach both circumstances. Delav isuri hanan. So he says, because these animals that are not going to be, because the one in Tamura is talking about animals that are not so prohibited in that they're not going to be prohibited for you to get any use out of.
Which ones in our Mishnah are the ones that are asur bana?
The ones at the beginning, chatos that mesos and the shor haniskal. The ones at the very
Only those ones.
Yes. Okay. So now you can say, well, wait a second. Then you go into the next part of the Mishnah is actually talking about all those cases that nevdo bo aveira and heimis esa adam and all of those kinds of cases. So then, so dilav isuri hana ninhu, those ones that are not prohibited. So hatanale. So our Mishnah continues on and teaches those also. So what was your point? The whole reason why I have the Mishnah in Tamura is because we included the ones that are not prohibited in Hana, and then our Mishnah lists those anyway. So then what is the point? So the answer is, V'nisneha v'lo boiha. All you got to do is teach them in the Mishnah of Tamura, and then you don't need to list those extra animals also over here. So the answer is no. I'll tell you why we list them over here is because takanta itzri chole. Here it tells us what the fix for the situation is. Over there it just tells you the smallest amount mixes in, they're all prohibited. Okay, but how do I fix that? So here it tells us, yes, you can let it go get a blemish, put it out into pasture, and then it gets a. So therefore, since here it's talking about getting fixed, that's why the Mishnah is listed over here. Now, dehedyot nani tanile. So, one second. What was your point? Your point was that if I have the ones that are prohibited from even getting hana, that was the purpose of our Mishnah, because the ones in Tamura tell us only that the Mishnah in Tamura only tells us the ones that are prohibited from being offered as karbanos. Here it even adds in the ones that are prohibited bahana. But those also are already listed in a Mishnah in Avodah Zarah. In Masechet Avodah says, ve'elu asurin ve'osrin bekolshein. These are the animals that are prohibited, and they are prohibited in any amount. They prohibit a whole flock they prohibit these items. They're not all animals. Items prohibit in any amount. Yayin nesech, right? Wine that was consecrated for idolatry. So if that gets poured into any amount of other wine, all the wine is prohibited. Ve'avodos kochavim, and idol worship. So all of those items, since they're prohibited in hana, then they get mixed up with other things. They prohibit everything that they have. So therefore, why does our Mishnah have to talk about these prohibitions, these items, the chatos shemesos and the shor niskal, which are prohibited from getting any benefit, when I already have a Mishnah in Avodah Zarah that tells me the items that are not allowed to get benefit? So the answer is tzrichi. I need those cases also to imei hasam, because if I had learned it from over there, havamina lehedyot, I would have thought that only those things that are prohibited to hana, right? The things that are most prohibited, the avodah zarah, those things are the ones that, if they mix up with others, then they can't be nullified. Aval ligavoa ema lo nifsadinu lekuluhu. I might have thought that if their only prohibition isn't as strict, it's not like it's prohibited for everybody, it's just that you can't bring these as korbanos, so then I would say, well, you shouldn't lose all of it, right? So therefore, we're going to be more lenient with those, and maybe it would be acceptable, and I don't have to get rid of all of them. And if I had learned only our case, I would have thought that, well, korbanos is a stricter thing. Why? Because they're disgusting. These things are disgusting, a disgrace to Hashem. But as far as these items which are prohibited, but they're not going to be disgraceful. So ema isuri, because they might have been used for averos, but they're still delicious in a burger. So then why would I be worried about it? So ema isuri hana livat liberuba. I might have thought that these isuri hana would be mevata, would be bottle in a rove. So tzrich, I need all of those cases. So therefore, no matter what, whether it is a korban, whether it is prohibited bahana, whether they are whichever circumstance that it is, from these combination of all these mishnayos, we learned that in any amount, they're always going to be unable to be nullified.
When the Mishnah says even 1 in 10,000, is that its way of saying even 1 in a million?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. 1 in a million, right? It does. 10,000 is a big number. So, but there's no such thing as nullification for it. And that's what the Gemara is going to start to worry about now. I understand now none of these prohibited items can be nullified. And the question is going to be, and it has nothing to do with the strictness of the prohibition. It's not that, hey, it's so strict because it's prohibited by law, or hey, we're being so strict because it's a sacrifice. It doesn't matter. These items, these animals can never be nullified. And the Gemara wants to know why. V'nivatlu Beruba. Why can't they be nullified in a majority? You've got majority good ones, you've got a couple of bad ones. Why can't that be nullified? So maybe the answer is because they are significant and important. So we are going to learn that the first rabbinic rule about things that don't get nullified is that anything which is significant, which has individual significance and importance, cannot be nullified. How do we know if something has significance and importance? The answer is, when I sell it, how do I sell it? Do I sell it as an individual item, or do I sell it by
As a package.
As a package, as a quantity, correct. So, for example, when I go to buy flour, I buy a pound, whatever is a kilo, right? That's how I buy it. But when I go to buy I don't know, a beer, right? I buy a single, right? I would go buy a beer, right? I buy
by the bottle
a
or-
6-pack, or whatever it is, right? Or whatever it is, but I'm buying a group. Each one of those beers is now a davar choshev. And since it's a davar choshev, it can't be nullified in the majority. So that's going to be our rule. So,
Because it's purchased as a
because they're purchased, because the individual item has significance. So I can never nullify an item that has individual significance. I can only nullify if I've got one bag of flour that is truma, let's say, and I've got 150 bags of non-truma flour. I can nullify that one bag of truma flour because I would buy it in a bulk package. Okay, so now, how are we going to look at these animals? So, hani chalaman damar kol shedarka limonos shaninu, elaman damar es shedarka limonos shaninu, Michael Memar. What makes something significant? We're going to see that it's subject to argument. If I sell an item only by specifying the number of items, a car, right? I sell it. I never buy 2 tons of cars, right?
You only buy one car.
I buy a car. I buy 2 cars. That's correct. I buy that. That's something that's a significant item. Okay, that everybody agrees to. Something like flour, which is always sold by the pound, everybody considers that to be non-significant and subject to nullification. The question is going to be, what happens if some people count it, but not and others do not? Right? Sometimes I sell 10 kilo of eggs, and sometimes I buy 5 dozen eggs. Right? So when we call that kol shedarko limonos, that means anything that can be counted, even if not always is it counted. Sometimes it can be sold by volume, or by weight. But sometimes some people do sell it individually, right? Versus es shedarko limonos means that in order for it to be important, everyone has to count it as a significant, important item. These animals are sometimes counted as significant items and sometimes not. Apparently, Rashi tells us, some people, when they buy a herd, they walk into the field and they say, I see the herd there, I'll take it, right? So then animals can be purchased by the herd rather than by the individual number of animals. So therefore, since this is an item, these are items that sometimes are purchased individually and sometimes purchased in the volume, in the bulk. So therefore, are these animals important or not? So the Gemara says, according to the opinion that says that even items that are sometimes sold as individual pieces are considered significant. So I understand our Mishnah why it would be that these animals are important and not sometimes sold individually. But it's not, as we're going to see in a Mishnah. Misha hayu lo chavile tilson. Let's say somebody had bundles of fenugreek. I'm not sure. I didn't look up. I knew Yehuda was going to do it.
What's it called?
Fenugreek. Fenugreek. It's a spice, a kind of, but it's a expensive herb, a nice herb.
R-E-N?
Fenugreek.
Fenugreek, right?
Fenugreek, that's the one, right? So you got bundles of it. And the thing is that you're not allowed to grow vegetables in your vineyard, right?
Fenugreek is a clover-like herb used as a spice herb and in traditional medicine, known for its seeds and leaves that have maple-like flavor.
There you go. Okay, so maple-like flavor.
what is that?
Okay, all right. I've never seen it in stores, but apparently it was a big item, right? So these you got bundles of this fenugreek, and it was grown in a vineyard. So that makes it that makes them prohibited. It's kilayim, right? You can't grow vegetables in your grape areas. So therefore, on ayin beis and beis, yidolku, you have to burn them. Yidaleku, you have to burn them. Nisarvu ba'acherim. Now, let's say you've got these prohibited fenugreeks, and you mix them together with others. Kulan yidaleku, you got to burn all of them. Different Rabbi Meir, so Rabbi Meir says. V'chachamim said, yalu be'echad umasayim. You can nullify them in a ratio of 1 to 200. Where does 1 to 200 come from? As Rashi tells us, truma is nullified in 1 to 100, but truma is not prohibited in getting benefit. It's not an isur b'hana, but these kilayim is asur b'hana, apart from getting benefit even, and so therefore it's doubly prohibited. So therefore, the nullification number the Rabbanan made is 1 to 200. So therefore, it can be nullified according to the Chachamim in 1 to 200. Why? Rabbi Meir says, Kol shedarko limanos mekadesh. She says that that anything that sometimes can be counted, right? Fenugreek is sometimes sold as bundles, and sometimes it's sold by the pound. So if you can buy fenugreek as a here, I'll take one bundle of fenugreek. Sometimes it's sold by the numbers. So then Rabbi Meir says, then that's going to be significant, and it can therefore, since it's significant, it can never be nullified. The Chacham and Rabbi Chacham disagree. Eino mekadesh el shisha dvarim bilvad. There are only 6 items that are considered to be so important that they're never nullified. That's it. And Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Shiva. Rabbi Akiva says, no, there's 7 of them. But here's the list. This is it. It's a very small list, so it's not going to contain animals or any of the other types. Here's the list. Ve'eluhein, egoze perach. If you've got nuts from a place called Perach, right? Or rimone badon. You've got pomegranates from Badon.
What's this list? This is the list of things that
are so important that you can never nullify them.
These are the only things?
That's it. Right? 6. There's 6 things. Not a Ford pickup truck. not on the list. Right?
Yeah.
This is it. So whether things got added to the list according to the Chachamim or not, it's a good question. Vechavios stumos, sealed barrels, sealed containers. Vechilfe tradin, and beets. I get beet shoots. Vekilche kruv, and stalks of, I think they're cabbage, right? Kruv is cabbage. Stalks of cabbage. What does he say over there? English is cabbage. Kilche kruv.
Cabbage stalks.
Okay, good. Stalks of cabbage, vidalas yavonis, and Greek gourds. These are all varieties that are so significant. They were sold. They used to have when I was. I remember somebody got me as a present one time. I have to have the kind of Harry and David. You know Harry and David. There's this catalog, and they used to sell pears. And it would be like, well, that's great. They were like $50 for a dozen pears or whatever. It was crazy. Somebody got me the gift of pears. First of all, they were really worth like amazing pears, like the craziest thing. So you can Google this. So it's like a real thing. This Harry and David, they sell the gift stuff, and they're like
Harry and David?
Harry and David pears, I think is what it is. And they sell the stuff. Anyway, but the point is, like, the one pear is much more significant than a pear that you would buy in the store. It's like a special, super kind of pear, right? So so they were like candy. So if you have these kinds of special versions of these things, so then
I'm surprised esrog is not on the list.
Right, esrog's not on the list. So that's a good point, right? Yeah. Esrog's not on the list and it's sold individually.
These are all food, so
that's true, right?
So it's not counting like a chatas that is out to die.
Well, so the thing is that animals are not on the list. And they're just not. Right? There's not. Why? Because they hold es shadar kolimnos. Since sometimes they're not counted, some people don't count them. They sell them in bulk. Okay? Rabbi Akiva, Mosef Afki Koshel Balabayis. Rabbi Akiva is going to add on also loaves of bread baked by a homeowner. His stuff is also sold individually. So haroi la'orla, haroi la'kilaya kerem, kilaya kerem. So those of these items which could be prohibited because they are orla, right? Because they you have to wait till they grow for 4 years if they grow on trees. You have to wait till they grow into their 4th year before they stop being prohibited. The first items in their first 3 years are orla and can't be used. And if you mix it together with other items, then they are also prohibited. And those things that are vegetables, things grown from the ground, vegetables are subject to kilayim. So all of those are going to prohibit and
don't you have to give you
never be nullified.
Don't you have to give you trumas meiser within the first 3 years?
Yes, that is true. You do have to also give trumas and meisers as also a separate prohibition, but these are going to be prohibited immediately, right?
Is it the value of the item that makes it more important, or the
doesn't seem to be? It seems to be because they were sold by the individual, and I would have to say that an animal would have to be more valuable than a Greek gourd, I would presume.
I would say majority of people wouldn't buy a whole
But apparently that was the way that was apparently.
That's how.
I don't know.
Nowadays, like one person would buy like one cow at a time.
Right. If you go to a cow auction, right? If you go to a cattle auction, maybe, right? Or they could be sold as one whole lot, right? 100 pieces or something.
If you want to go to cattle auction, you should go to Nashville. They have a lot of those there.
So there you go. Good advice.
No, it's in Chicago. That's where they sell cows.
That's it.
Yeah.
So
So,
v'itmar Allah. On this piece, they were discussing what is it that Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim are arguing about. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Es Shedarko Limano Shaninu. Rabbi Yochanan says that that Rabbi Meir's opinion is those items that are counted by everybody, besides these 6 items or 7 items, anything that is counted as individual can also be considered important. That's what Rabbi Meir says. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, Rabbi Shimon says, Kol Shedarko Limanos. It's not only that things that everybody counts, but anything that anybody counts. As long as these items can be sold individually, they are significant, right? Nobody sells 6 peanuts. They sell a bag of peanuts, right? So those are not going to be significant. But if somebody is going to sell a watermelon, so that's going to be significant. And even though some people, right, if you go to the store is going to buy, 10 cases of watermelons, and they don't care how many, but they're going to sell them. I guess they sell them by the pound, don't they? Right? But anyway, it has to be something that is sold as a individual unit. So then that's the difference between Rabbi Shimon and Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. So therefore, Hanicha, back to our point after the sidetrack when we showed the argument. Hanicha l'Reish Lakish. Our Mishnah makes sense according to Reish Lakish. Since animals are sometimes counted, so therefore that makes sense why in our Mishnah the animals are not nullified. El Rabbi Yochanan, but according to Rabbi Yochanan, Ma'ikal Meimar, what is your explanation for why this is not going to be nullified? So Amar Rav Papa says, Hai Tana Tano de Litra Kitziosu. Maybe Rav Papa says, our Mishnah is going according to the opinion of the Litra Kitzios. The Litra Kitzios are the cut figs. That's what we're dealing with. They're the Tana who holds about cut figs. To Amar, he says, on to Ayin Gimel Malaf, Kol davar sheyesh bo minyan afilu b'derabanan lo batel. Because anything that anybody sells by number, by individual piece, is not nullified, even rabbinically, right? Even if the prohibition is only a rabbinic prohibition, we're still not going to nullify it. Normally, we go lenient when it comes to rabbinic prohibitions. So we might have thought, well, okay, in a Torah prohibition, we're not going to nullify. But when a rabbinic prohibition comes along, maybe we won't nullify this opinion. This person this Tana of Litra Kitzios holds that these items are never nullified. Even if it's not Rabbi Meir's opinion, it is this fellow's opinion. Who is this? The Kolshke Midoraisa. For sure, Torah prohibitions are never going to be nullified. Titania, here we go. We ordered a brisa. Litro Ktzios Shedarsa al pi igul. You've got pressed figs. And what they would do with these pressed figs, they would take their figs and they would put them into some round molds, and then they press them together and store them in like cakes of round molds. And what they would do is in their containers, in these barrels, they could stack them, right? Stack them up. So this person...
Is that how they dry it as well? Or?
Yeah, they would dry, and then they would keep them that way, right? Because dried fruits last a lot longer than fresh fruits. So they would press them, and they would get sold that way. He has these pressed figs that are in the mold. But he doesn't know which of the molds it is that he has the truma ones. Okay, so al pi chavis v'eino dea be'ezo chavis darsa. Then he takes that, he takes them and he puts them into a barrel, right? But he doesn't know which barrel they're in. Al pi koveres, or this large jar or jug, right? Same idea. And he puts them in there, and he doesn't know. He doesn't know which one it's in. So he's got all of these. He's got this pressed cake of figs. One of them is truma, and it's mixed together with all of these other cakes of figs. He doesn't know which one is which.
Would that make it all prohibited?
So that's what we're going to say. Rabbi Meir says. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, I'll tell you, Rabbi Meir says first, there's two opinions on the matter. First is Rabbi Eliezer's opinion. Roen es halionos kilu hein prudos v'hatachtonos malos es halionos. You don't know where you don't know which barrel it's in, but you do know that you put it in top, right? I remember I put it on top of a barrel, and then I got all my barrels mixed up. So says Rabbi Eliezer, you take a look at the top ones and you say, I know it was on the top, which means that all the ones underneath are for sure permitted, because it couldn't be any of those. And then, furthermore, I take a look at the total number of cakes of figs that I have, and if I have a 1 to 100 ratio, I nullify the truma, and then it's fine. Okay, that's what Rabbi Eliezer says. Rabbi Yeshua says, Im yesh mea pumin yalu. He says, well, if you know it's on the top, you can't nullify it by mixing all the cakes of figs, including the ones that are not on the top. You have to have 100 barrels so that you have 100 top ones, and then you can nullify the top figs that you mixed up by having 100 to 1, only by nullifying it the ones that are relevant and in play. V'im lav, and if not, hapumin asurin v'ashulayim mutarin, then the top ones are going to be prohibited, but the bottom ones are all permitted, because we know it's not a bottom one. That's how Rabbi Meir discusses the argument between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. But Rabbi Yehuda says that's not what they argued about. Rabbi Eliezer says what you thought Rabbi Yeshua said. Rabbi Eliezer says, Omer im yesh sham kuf pumin, if you've got 100 barrels, ya'alu, so then it can be nullified. V'im lav, but if not, hapumin asurin, then the top ones are prohibited, and the rest of them are permitted. Okay, so that's what Rabbi Yeshua said before. Then what is it that Rabbi Yeshua says? Then Rabbi Yeshua Omer, afilu yesham shalosh me'osh puminim, if you've got 300 barrels, and you should for sure be nullified, the answer is, lo yalu, it never gets nullified. And that is who is in our Mishnah. Our Mishnah is this strict Rabbi Yeshua point. This is Rabbi Yeshua according to Rabbi Yehuda, who holds that these items are never nullified. That's why these animals can never be nullified.
Rabbi Yehuda would be the most strict one.
Rabbi Yehuda says that Rabbi Yeshua is the strictest one. That's right. Darsa be'igol. Meanwhile, if you trampled all of these into a mold, ve'enu yodeh be'ezum makom be'igol darsa, you don't know where in the cake of figs this truma got mixed in. Olitzvona, olidroma, the north side of it, the top of it, the bottom of it. Divrei hakol yalu. Everyone agrees that that gets nullified, right? Then that's a 1 to 100 ratio. That for sure gets nullified. Okay.
Why?
Yep. Sorry.
Why can't you just say, oh, I don't know where it is in the barrel?
Why can't you say it? Because it's not true.
Why does it matter that you know? I guess if you know that's on the top, then you can't be muvatel.
Exactly.
Okay.
Unless you've got 100 tops, right? So okay. So that is this. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda has Rabbi Shita that says that since there's something that is sold as a unique item by some, right? Otherwise, it could be sold by the barrel too. But if some sell it by unique, it's never nullified. Okay. So Rav Ashi Amar Afilu Temer Rabbanon. The Rav Ashi says, no, why we don't have to. We've given two explanations of our Mishnah. One is that it is according to how Reish Lakish interprets Rabbi Meir. One is according to the Rabbi Yehuda interprets Rabbi Yeshua. He says, no, it could even be the Chachamim. Because Balei Chayim Chashivi V'lo Matli. Could be there's another category of things that are never nullified, and that is living items. Things that are alive are never nullified. Okay?
That's an easier answer.
That's right. So therefore, and everybody holds that way, and that's that. There are other possible things that are never nullified. Tosfos, the long Tosfos, discusses why, this long Tosfos in Ayin Gimel discusses why is it that we don't have the concept of something which is, for example, something which is served as an honorable, respectful item. If I have a steak that's honorable, respectful to be served, it's not nullified. So why don't we include that as a circumstance? Also, he postulates that we're talking about even ophos, birds here that can be mixed up, and therefore birds are never something that's significant or important. But other Rishonim discuss that it's because these are animals; they're not prepared, right? It's a whole animal. If I've got a steak and it's barbecued and it's prepared and it's delicious, right? But if I've got a goat, nobody takes a look at the goat and says yummy. Right, so I've got to wait till. So therefore, that's not going to count yet. So anyway,
is this the longest Tosfos in all?
No, that's a great question. But no, I think there are maybe longer ones as well.
There was a bigger one earlier.
Yeah,
I remember it was like 20 block ago. It took me the entire page.
That's correct.
I forget which page.
Those are scary. Okay, so now next, I get it. if I mix the whole group together as a group, the whole thing is not nullified, right? And the whole thing is prohibited. Why don't I do this though? V'nimshoch v'nikrav chai minayu. Why don't you just grab any cow at random? Pull it out of the group. Now it's not part of the group anymore. And now that it's not part of the group, v'nema, let's say, called the parish meruba parish. What kind of animal is this one? The answer is, you go by the majority at that point, right? This one has, the whole, when it was mixed all together, the whole mixture was no good. But now that I take this one animal, I pull it out, so I have to determine what is the status of this one animal, and then I'd follow the majority.
Can maybe be a mixed breed?
The animal, it's not a breed issue, right? Remember, the issue is that the animal was designated as a chatos, but it can't be brought, right? So therefore, now that I've pulled it out, I should be able to say it came from the majority. Okay, so the answer is nimshoch havile kavua. So once I pull it out of the group, so now I've got a whole bunch of animals standing around. So how do I look at items that are standing around and not moving? We say kol kavua kemech tzamech tzadami. Any things that are not moving around, the halachic status is we look at them as 50-50, right? So therefore, this animal, once I pull it out of the group, at the end of the day, I look at it and go, what is it now? The answer is 50-50. So I'm still no better off and I can't use it. What is the svara behind that? That's complicated. And I always try to figure out and think about it. And I don't have a great answer for why once something is not moving, it becomes 50-50.
I don't understand even the question. Like, why don't you pull it out, right?
Here's my, right, I've got my, here's my group of cows. These are all the cows, right? Every dot is a cow. And then I've got one that's prohibited in here. I don't know which one it is, okay? So now I take a look at this whole flock. It's prohibited. I can't touch them, okay? So what do? I go and I rope in this one. Pull it out here. Now that I'm looking at it over here, what is it? It's not prohibited because it's part of a flock anymore. It's not part of the flock.
Yeah, but you've just done that, you physically removed it. It's still actually a part of that problem.
But now that it's physically removed, it's not part of the problem. Moshe Feinstein says, for example, let's say I have, I want to set the table on Shabbos. And I open up the drawer and I told my I don't want to pick on my teenage kids. They're very, very good. But let's say, hypothetically, I've got a teenage son who isn't as zealous as my children are following my instructions. Let's say they were told to empty the dishwasher and put it in the drawer. And I open the drawer and all of the forks and knives and spoons are all a bundle of mess. Inside the drawer, okay? Let's say that happened. So now I want to set the table for Shabbos. Can't pull out from the mixture.
It's called selecting, which is an
selecting, right? Borer. So Moshe Feinstein says, take the whole bundle of them, go to your table, and all of the table. Once I do that, now this fork is here, the knife is here, this one. Now it's not a mixture anymore.
That's a big mess.
Right? But I can take the fork now and set it.
It's still a big mess.
Once I pull it out, it's not in the mixture anymore.
Okay, but we're talking about
so now
talking about possibly taking one of these animals and using it as a carbon, right? Just because you took it out of the mixture, that's just like it sounds like a joke, right? You've just moved it a little bit and it's not in the...
Well, so now I have to take a look and say, it was prohibited as part of a mixture. Now that it's not part of a mixture, I have to analyze where it's from.
On Shabbos, you're not allowed to select.
Correct.
Right? Here you are allowed to select, but that doesn't matter if you select it or not.
So now I select, and by selecting, I have removed it from the problem, right? And so now, but remember, that's why I insisted at the beginning to be able to share. Remember, these are rabbinic rules in the first place, right? So therefore, if they sometimes seem a little lenient, right? So therefore, the first thought is, once I pull it out, now I got to analyze. So therefore, logic would seem to indicate that it's not the prohibited one because it's the significant minority of the animals, right? So then we say, no, it's not, because once we pull it out, we're going to look at it and say, it is or it isn't, right? We're going to just take a look at the animal and say, here, this stationary animal, it really has two choices. Either it is prohibited or isn't. It's not a matter of what are the chances it was prohibited or not, because it's set. Now, this is going to really bother you, because it bothers me too, but I'm going to pretend it doesn't bother me so I can defend it. Ella, what do? Nichbeshinhu denaidi. So what we should do is go run around, chase the animals, get them moving. Now that the animals are all running around and moving, the name called the Parish Meruba Parish. Now that they're moving, they're not stationary. Now that they're not stationary, now I can grab one, and now I can say it came from the majority.
Good at catching it.
Right? So now what I've done is just because I've chased them around a little bit, now they become permitted. Right? There are Rishonim that deal with this issue, but it is, if it bothers you, it's supposed to, because it's not straightforward. Okay? Amar Rava says the reason why we don't do that, Gezerah Shema Yavohu Yud Kohanim Bas Achas Vayakrivu. Here's the problem. 10 Kohanim are going to come along. They're going to grab 10 of the animals. They're going to shech 10 of the animals. They're going to catch the blood of 10 of the animals. And all of them are going to throw the blood against the Mizbeach at the exact same time. And as a result, what are the chances of one of the animals being the prohibited animal? 10 times the chances that it was before when you only were doing one. Now it's not the minority anymore. Let's say you had 11 animals. Now that 10 Kohanim came and grabbed 10 of them, you probably have the majority now. So you have a majority chance that you took an usher one. That's the problem. Amar Leah, Humi Rabbanan the Rava. One of the rabbis said to Rava, El Me'at, if that's true, Magisa Asira, Mishum Shema Yavo Yud Kohanim Bas Achas Vikhu. He says, if that is the case, then where does the prohibition lie? In other words, when the 10 Kohanim came along, right, and they each grabbed their animal, right, as they were grabbing each one was permitted because it was nullified, right? So I grabbed this one, it was nullified. I grabbed that one, was nullified. They grabbed that one. Each time I now have 10 nullified animals. Well, that means that I have 10 permitted animals. And now you're going to go back and say, now that all the blood got thrown at the same time, 10 out of the 11 animals' blood got thrown. It must be that the prohibited one was there. Well, how does Bittul work? Bittul says that since it's nullified, it is now permitted. You can't then go back and recombine and say, all of them, there must have been a prohibited animal amongst the group. That's cheating. Once one Kohen 1 grabbed an animal, it was permitted. Once Kohen 2 grabbed an animal, it was permitted. Each one, as they grabbed one at a time, it was permitted. And now just because they all came together and threw it at the same time, now it becomes prohibited? So, therefore, Mishum Deshema Yavo Yud Kohanim Bavas Achas Vikhu. The answer is no, because what must have happened was 10 Kohanim came and they all brought their lassos and they all caught the animals all at the same time. Therefore, they were never a case that each one was, if each one had been picked out separately, you're right, then each one as it came out, we would presume that it would be part of the majority and it wouldn't be prohibited. But since 10 Kohanim came all at the same time, your chances are 10 out of 11 that you've got the prohibited item, and therefore it's not nullified. Okay, well, the problem with that is, Basar Kohanim Bebas Achas Miafshar. How could 10 Kohanim catch 10 moving animals simultaneously? That's unrealistic, right? Fine, I could understand how the Kohanim could say 1, 2, 3 and throw the blood all at the same time. But for them all to catch moving animals, remember we were chasing them around, so 10 Kohanim show up and they all catch their moving animals simultaneously? That's unrealistic. So that's not the issue. Elam Rava says Mishum Kavua. The answer is, I'll tell you why. You can't catch them when they're moving. You're right. If you did catch them when they're moving, that would be permitted. But the problem is that if I permit that, then somebody's going to show up and not make the move. And he's just going to grab one. And then we're back to the fact that that would be prohibited. So therefore, as a Gezerah D'Rabbanan, rabbinically prohibited, we're going to say you can't do that. You can't grab it even while it's moving. Okay? Fine. Amar Rava says, Hashad Amri Rabbanan lo nakriv. Now that the rabbi said you can't bring it as a korban. Remember, we said these are all not nullified midrabanan, right? It's all rabbinic. Now that the rabbi said don't bring it, ikariv lo maratzi. If
it's midrabanan,
right, midoraisa, majorities nullify.
I mean, in our Mishnah, that's all midrabanan.
It's all rabbinic. Yeah,
okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
So, Rava says now that we're saying the rabbi is saying let's not bring it. If you do bring it, the korban is mida oraisa, not valid. Somehow the rabbis have the ability of nullifying your korban. So Mefarshim try to figure out how they do that, right? One great answer is we know that Beis Din has the power of what's called Hefker Beis Din Hefker, right? They can take your possessions away from you. If you don't follow what they say, and you say, I'm grabbing this animal anyway, the Rabbanan said, great, but it's not yours now.
It's like Kiddushin, right? They can nullify your Kiddushin.
So that's another explanation, right? That when somebody gets married, they can be married al das Moshe v'Yisrael, right? They get married according to halacha. So also your hektish, your korban, is always presumed to be according to with permission of the rabbis. Esvei Rav Huna bar Yehuda Rava. So Rav Huna, the son of Yehuda, says to Rava on that point, Chatos nisarfa ba'ola. Let's say I've got a chatos that gets mixed up together with an ola. Okay? The ola shenis arba chatos. And I have an ola that gets mixed together with a chatos. We're talking about birds. Okay? So what happens? Afilu achas beribo yamusu. Even if one of them gets mixed up, now they're all no good. Can't bring them because an ola is brought above the red line, the chatas is brought below the red line. I can't bring them now. So now they are all of them you can't bring. They're all going to die. Cool, because you can't put them out to pasture to get a blemish because the blemish is by birds. So they're all going to die. Kulan b'medvar murin. So what is that? Yamusu kulan. They all die. B'medvar murin. When do we say that? Bekohen nimach. That's only if the kohen asks, right? Kohen says, I mixed them all up. Rabbi, what do I do? The answer is, don't use them. Okay. Aval. But what happens? Bekohen she'ein nimlach. What if the kohen doesn't ask? He walks right over the mizbeach and asan lamala and he does all of them above. So mechza kosher, mechza puzzle. Lemata, mechza kosher, mechza puzzle. He does both birds above. One of the birds is kosher after all, right? Because one of them was nola. He does both of them below. One of them is kosher after all, right? So if he asks in advance, we tell him don't do it. But if he did it, it's valid.
But you don't know which one is valid.
But you don't know which one.
You don't know which one.
Well,
so you don't know which person who brought the ola or the chata.
This we have, and that now we're Maseches Kinim, where we have to now bring all the possibilities to solve that problem, right? Now, of course, if you do one above, one below, shnei psuos, then none of them are good because possibility is that you brought the ola below and you brought the chatas above. So that's not going to be good. Shani Omer chatas kriv lamala v'ola kriv lamata. Chatas has to be done because I might say that the chatas was done above and the ola was done below, nullifying both of them. Okay, so now the problem is that if what you said is if you didn't go against what the Chachamim would say, the korban is supposed to be nullified. Well, how did this Kohen get away with making one of the korbanos valid? Shouldn't it be nullified?
This one wasn't midrabanan. This Mishnah is not.
All of the nullifications are Durham. All of the one, whenever you say 1 in 10,000, it's right. He said because we're saying if you ask the rabbi would say no, it's no good. But if
This Mishnah that we're bringing the question from, this is one chatas bird that's mixed up with one
ola bird, correct?
Right?
So the Chachamim say don't bring it because if you would have brought it, it's fine.
Why would if you would have brought it with the
Because we say if I brought 2 below, that means one of them was a chatos, so therefore one of them is fine.
Okay.
Right? So
you're saying really midoraisa.
Midoraisa, it seems it works, but the Rabbanan told you not to do it. But you just told me the rule that if the Rabbanan told me not to do it, it should be not good even midoraisa. Ella, ha kiman damar bali chaim nidchin, ha kiman damar bali chaim einon nidchin. The issue at play here is that there's an argument between whether animals, once they become invalid, whether they can now come back and become valid again. Right? Do we have a minion? Are we ready? It sounds like we're ready. Okay, so we'll pick up from this point on Sunday.